Welcome back. Court is on a quick sidebar. Right now on the stand is Ashley Clark. She's a defense witness in the case where the baby was caught in gang crossfire. Ashley Clark is a defense witness for Richardson. Remember, this is a case with 2 juries and 2 possible verdicts and 2 defendants. So jurors are playing musical jury, they're cycling in and out, a lot to be considered. So far, what she said that has been interesting is that she seems to be in the circle, dating gang members. She has a tattoo on her body of Henry Hayes' name, but she's throwing a 3rd name into the mix, Bradford, as if to say possibly that neither Richardson or Hayes was the shooter, but Bradford was. This testimony is still unfolding live in the courtroom, but there is a quick sidebar, so let's have some in-studio analysis with me. Mari Henderson, prosecutor. Mari, what do you think? How is it going so far for this witness? Is she even credible? I mean, she's an inmate herself.
I think that the juries will have to weigh her credibility given the fact that, you know, she's an inmate, she's dressed in her own prison garb, she has past convictions, and then also her relationship with the defendants. I actually don't think it was that great of an idea for Henry Hayes' own defense attorney to get up there and elicit the testimony that she has a tattoo of him on her body, because then that just goes to show her motive and her bias, that she's biased towards his client, so she's going to be willing to lie and say that someone else did it rather than him because they were in a dating relationship.
Right. I mean, it's almost, you hear an eye for an eye, but in this case, it's like a baby for a baby. You know, you hear motive, how her baby was shot, not killed, but shot, and then you hear testimony of, do you want me to take care of this for you, or he was gonna handle that for me, is what she said on the stand. Really, really, really muddy testimony, I feel like we're listening to, and I don't know if it's helping their case. But I guess that they don't have any other choice but to pin some 3rd possible person, this new name, Bradford, as a possible shooter, because she obviously has ties to both Richardson and Hayes.
Yes, I mean, the weakest element for the prosecution here is proving identity, proving that Hayes and Richardson were the ones involved in the shooting and the ones responsible for this shooting. So having someone testify that someone else was involved and that they clearly had the motive to do it because they were doing an eye for an eye, that you know, gives the jury's reasonable doubt. Maybe someone else did it, but I don't think her testimony alone is strong enough to plant that reasonable doubt in jurors' minds.
I agree with you. I'm a former prosecutor. I don't think that this is enough reasonable doubt. But when you look at everything holistically, even though they're trying to pin ID as an issue, I thought today they did a pretty good job with the testimony which was played earlier of showing that the mom reached back behind in the car to get her cell phone and saw the shooter, and she was able to pinpoint exactly how he was holding the gun, how he pulled the trigger. And then we heard from the firearms experts who discussed, you know, how the bullets may have been related to a gun that, you know, it all sort of linked together circumstantially. But, you know, you're dealing with a case that is a sad case, no matter how you look at it. And the jurors are going to want to hold someone accountable. If you were also following us earlier today, this morning, we had a discussion of a juror crying, and defense wanted to dismiss her because they, you know, thought that she'd be biased. And then the judge said, no, we're not going to do that. You know, we're not going to dismiss. That's not a reason to dismiss a juror. So anyway, we need to throw to a quick break, but we'll come back to some in-studio analysis when we return. Wow, did you see that story on the fireworks? Well, it's 4th of July, and I'm wearing red, white, and blue, and so is my guest, Mari Henderson. I like your red jacket. For those of you that don't know, I have blue shoes on. What a crazy lawyer. I don't know, did you see that story where they were, I mean, what not to do? Crazy lawyer.
Yes.
I mean, is there any liability on that, having kind of airing something like that?
I mean, I went to his website, and he actually has like several videos where he's really just kind of like a stunt man. He had one on what if Santa Claus was charged with domestic violence. I saw that. Some really ridiculous, you know, kind of out there advertising. But at least what I saw is still within the bounds of somehow being fine with the state bar.
It seems like reverse psychology on getting injured and how not to get injured. I actually had a client, you know, can't say who or what, but was playing with fireworks on the 4th of July. He was injured in a car accident case, but on the 4th of July, playing with fireworks and lost an eye. So what not to do with fireworks, right? That's what he's showing. Running on a treadmill, getting shot in the back, running around a field, batting off fireworks coming at him on a lawnmower. Totally crazy. The production value alone in this is quite amazing. Anyway, we're going to throw to the trial our main trial that we're covering out of Florida, 2016 case. Baby Aiden McClendon was shot and killed in gang crossfire. Heart-wrenching case. The defense has rested today. The state has rested. One of the jurors' panels has been dismissed, and now there's some housekeeping matters in the courtroom. The judge is talking to the attorneys, and we are keeping a close watch in the courtroom, but let's have a quick special report recapping this main trial.
Only 22 months old, baby Aiden McClendon's life was taken in a flash. Aiden's mother, Tamisha Brown, became emotional as she recounted on the stand what she saw from inside a car with her baby boy the night he died.
It was the one guy that I saw in the back seat, and then
Who was it that you identified?
Harry Hayes.
You have two shooters. Who was he in that car?
He was in the back passenger side.
Okay.
He was the one that was actually leaning out of the car.
Okay.
Harry, that's the person that was in the back seat.
Okay. Shooting a gun?
Yes.
And did you write a statement on that photograph memorializing?
Yes.
And what was that?
He shot and killed my baby.
Kwame Richardson and Henry Lee Hayes are now on trial for the little boy's murder. Prosecutors say the suspects participated in a drive-by shooting, which led to the unintentional death of the 1-year-old. Investigators believe a gang conflict is to blame. Jurors were shown a music video filmed by the gang that both defendants were allegedly a part of. Prosecutors believe the intended target and cousin of baby Aiden was affiliated with the rival group. Both defendants now facing charges of second-degree murder, 2 charges of attempted first-degree murder, discharging a firearm from a vehicle, and shooting or throwing deadly missiles. For Law and Crime, I'm Dan Abrams.
That's a quick recap of the case told by Dan Abrams. Really sad case out of Florida. With me on set is Mari Henderson, prosecutor out of LA. We were just talking on set. We found out that we actually went to school together back in 2010 and didn't realize it and are making the link. But we're going to have to, before we go to a break, I want to just ask you, how do you think it's going?
I think the defense only had one witness, and then that's it. So I think it's going well for the prosecution so far. But in the end, I think ID will be the issue.
Right. So next, the state's going to put on a rebuttal. So we'll see what their rebuttal is. I almost feel like they don't even need to have a rebuttal. It went well for the prosecution. If anyone is going to use common sense here, that these guys are obviously linked to organized crime. We have, and we're going to play for you, Ashley Clark. She is Richardson's only star defense witness, and we're going to replay some of her direct examination on the stand now.
Somebody did.
That is Ashley Clark, that defense witness for the Richardson defendant. Remember, we have 2 defendants, 2 jurors, jury panels, 2 possible verdicts. With me on set is Mari Henderson, a prosecutor. You know, we've been hearing a lot of testimony today from Ashley, you know, about how she had a tattoo on her of Mr. Hayes, which could go to motive, and how she has dated other gang members. And then she brings up another name, Bradford, who do you think Bradford is? And where did he come from?
I mean, he is the classic third chair. He is the person they are trying to pin it on and blame it on. He's the some other dude did it. The third chair that's not there, that they're trying to create reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors.
And do you think that Bradford is someone that could have charges brought against him? Or do you think he's someone that's possibly already incarcerated?
You know, it's interesting because he's not there to testify, and there is a jury instruction that can be given about calling logical witnesses and a failure to call a logical witness. And so I think the prosecution would be smart to have that jury instruction to kind of show, well, if Bradford really did it, then, you know, why wasn't he called to the stand? Why didn't he testify? So,
well, is it possible that he did testify and that he was possibly one of the members, gang members that did testify in closed court? Is that possible?
I mean, that's possible, but the jury would know that, you know, if you know, they were seated during it. But it's interesting to pin it on someone else, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about which gang he was in, where her affiliations lie, his gang membership compared to Aiden's cousin, and where all that plays.
You know, we are sort of out of the loop. As much as we're covering this testimony live in the courtroom, we are, you know, this is a closed courtroom on certain witnesses because of safety concerns. And the jurors are all anonymous as well in this case for their safety. So we really are out of the loop on some of these deliberations that the jurors are going to get to have in the deliberation room, and we're not going to get to know what that is. This is the case out of Florida, Richardson v. Hayes. Baby Aiden McClendon, 22 months old, was shot and killed in gang crossfire. We are maintaining a close watch on this trial. After this quick break, stick with us. That's Ashley Clark, defense witness for Richardson, trying to pin the shooter on Bradford, a third party. With me, Mari Henderson, a prosecutor. Mari, you know, we've been discussing this today. She's the star witness. She's defense's only witness. She's an inmate herself. Her credibility is a little bit iffy, I would say. Are you buying it?
I'm buying it, but they didn't connect the dots enough, because what she said is, you know, testified that Bradford said, I'll take care of it for you, and she took that to mean that maybe he had something to do with it. Well, fine, maybe he did have something to do with it, but that doesn't mean that he was the shooter, and that doesn't mean that the two people who are sitting in the defendant's chairs right now weren't the shooter. Yes, he may have had something to do with it, but they didn't really bring it full circle as to whether, you know, he was another aider and abetter, and they do have the right people sitting in the defendant's chairs right now.
And what about the fact that there were so many shots fired that there were probably multiple shooters?
Yes, and I mean,
let's talk about the felony murder rule. Let's talk about transferred intent.
You know, here it's interesting because the intended victim was not this toddler. The intended victim was his cousin, but you know, they are still liable for what happened. And sometimes for juries, it's really hard to accept that concept, or especially in felony murder. So if, you know, you're intending to commit a robbery, and during the commission of a robbery, someone gets shot, that's felony murder. That can be very difficult for juries to accept. So that's really important at the voir dire or at the jury selection stage to test out those concepts and select jurors who are comfortable with it.
Right, but in this case, when you hear her testify, you almost wonder if the child was the intended victim. Like we said earlier, an eye for an eye, a baby for a baby. She had her daughter shot, though not killed, and now she's pinning it on a witness, or she's pinning it on another potential defendant, that he was going to take care of it for her, that he was going to handle that for me, was his quote. I mean, we don't even, that, to me, that casts doubt on who the intended victim even is.
It does, and also, again, I don't think that the defense was clear enough in connecting those dots, because she did name someone as the person who shot at her baby, who she believed was the person who shot at her baby, but then they didn't connect the dots that that may have been, you know, the rival gang member. So I just think it wasn't the clearest
testimony. But maybe even if it wasn't the rival gang member, it was still the rival gang. So in their mind, a gang is a family universe, and another gang is another family universe, and an eye for an eye.
Yes, I mean, I think that's all the defense really has here is that they called someone. So, you know, they were able to get one person on the stand. Oftentimes, you know, the defense has no case, and in closing, all they can do is just try to poke holes in the prosecution's case. Here, they are giving an alternative.
So, yeah, and I want to talk about that. You know, so in this case, this is a tough case. When you're dealing with a baby that has been killed, an innocent child, a 22-month-old baby. I mean, when I was on last week last week, covering this case, I started to cry myself listening to the mother cry and the great-grandmother cry. It is heart-wrenching testimony. But when you're watching that, you know the jurors are going to want to hold someone accountable, right? So how do you, as a defense attorney, come back from that? Do you put your clients on the stand? They don't have to testify, but I would think the jurors probably want, as much as they shouldn't hold it against them and they can't hold it against them, you have to think that they must be holding it against them because they're not talking. And don't you want to hear what they have to say?
Unless it's a case of self-defense, generally it is a very, very bad idea to have the defendant take the stand and open up that can of worms.
Right, because you subject yourself to cross-examination. But at this point, what do they have to lose?
I mean, I think it's better to not have them testify than to have them get up there and be subject to a brutal cross and have jurors hate them even more than they may already, given that the situation of this being a toddler.
So you would just hang your hat and say, prosecution didn't, if you were the defense attorney, you're a prosecutor, I know. But if you would hang your hat saying prosecution hasn't proven its case, there's reasonable doubt, it's that guy, it's a third guy, it's another guy that's not, standing trial right now.
And at least they gave them a third guy. They gave them an alternative. Oftentimes, in defense cases, they don't even have that. All they have is, I can't tell you who did it or what happened, but I can tell you that there's holes here, and that's reasonable doubt, and so because of that, you can't convict.
Okay, so let's go back and listen to some of those holes in the courtroom. Ashley Clark is testifying. She's Richardson's star witness for the defense. Defense witness for Richardson. This is the case out of Florida where a baby was caught in gun crossfire between two rival gangs. He was not the alleged intended target at this time, but that is the defense witness. Muddy testimony with me, Mari Henderson, prosecutor. Really quick, let's talk about her testimony. She, has a tattoo of Hayes' name on her. She says they weren't dating, but were they dating? What do you think?
I mean, I would be interested to know what other tattoos she has on her and if she has tattoos of other gang members on her body as well, because if she does, then maybe, there isn't a bias there. But I thought it was interesting that Henry Hayes' own attorney brought up that testimony with her, that she has his client's name tattooed on her body. I think he did that so that the prosecution wasn't the first one to bring that up.
Right, he didn't want surprise testimony.
Correct.
I mean, if there's surprise testimony, it doesn't look good. It looks like they're hiding things, and then what else are they hiding?
And I think it was a strategic move to have the other defendant call her as their witness as opposed to have Hayes.
Right. So in this case, there's two jury panels, and two defendants. How often do you see two jury panels cycling through, and why would a court do that?
I mean, each defendant has a right to their own jury. It's just like the Menendez brothers case. They're both paneled at the same time. They're going to have separate deliberations, and again, they could have separate verdicts and inconsistent verdicts.
And this would probably be in the interest of judicial economy, so a case doesn't have to be tried twice. You don't have to put the victims through, the testimony twice. You don't have to hire the experts twice. Anyway, we're going to have to throw to a quick break, so stick with us, and we will be back in the courtroom live with some more in-studio analysis as well.
Only 22 months old, baby Aiden McClendon's life was taken in a flash. Aiden's mother, Tamisha Brown, became emotional as she recounted on the stand what she saw from inside a car with her baby boy the night he died.
It was the one guy that I saw in the back seat, and then Henry Hayes.
You have two shooters. Who was he in that car?
He was in the back passenger side.
Okay.
He was the one that was actually leaning out of the car.
Okay.
Henry, that's the person that was in the back seat.
Okay. Shooting a gun?
Yes.
And did you write a statement on that photograph memorializing?
Yes.
And what was that?
He shot and killed my baby.
Kwame Richardson and Henry Lee Hayes are now on trial for the little boy's murder. Prosecutors say the suspects participated in a drive-by shooting which led to the unintentional death of the 1-year-old. Investigators believe a gang conflict is to blame. Jurors were shown a music video filmed by the gang that both defendants were allegedly a part of. Prosecutors believe the intended target and cousin of baby Aiden was affiliated with the rival group. Both defendants now facing charges of second-degree murder, 2 charges of attempted first-degree murder, discharging a firearm from a vehicle, and shooting or throwing deadly missiles. For Law and Crime, I'm Dan Abrams.
Welcome back. I'm Carissa Kranz. That was a special report on the main trial that we're following right now. With me in studio is Mari Henderson, a prosecutor out of Los Angeles. Thanks for being on set with me. It's nice to have you in New York. What do you think about identification? Do you think that they're going to have a hard time and that there's reasonable doubt, or do you feel like there's enough circumstantial evidence to point the finger that these guys were somehow involved in the shooting?
Well, I think the fact that the witnesses who were in the car, the witness in the car, turned around, got a clear view, and identified the defendants and was consistent in identification. At no point did she, was she presented with a 6-pack or photographic lineup where she, pointed to someone else or any issue like that.
And that's a good point. And I don't know if the control room can maybe find that clip, because I think she was very intent on what she was saying, that it's him. She identified him in court, that when she turned back and grabbed the phone, that's the man in court. He's sitting right there, and he's in that colored T-shirt. I think that's powerful testimony.
I think it's very powerful testimony for the prosecution. And, another option for the defense is they could have called an expert to call into question, the reliability of that identification, because sometimes experts can talk about, the stress of the event. She was literally witnessing this baby die in her arms, and whether she could have reliably identified someone and the features of their face and everything like that. So that was another option that the defense could have gone down. They didn't call an expert like that to call into question her reliability of her identification, but they could have.
And one thing I think that you really see happen in these kind of cases is when ordinary people become extraordinary under certain circumstances. Like a mother is being, and her child, and then her mother in the car are being shot at. So many shots, they don't even know how many. The tire blew, and she still drove, metal to the asphalt, is what they said in testimony, him to the hospital while the grandmother's holding his hand. Saying it's going to be okay, thinking just the shot grazed his head, not knowing that there were 3 shots and that he was going to have to go into surgery and be fatally wounded. But even so, they held it together. They tried to comfort him, asphalt to the metal, tried to leave, go to the hospital, hand the baby over to the doctor, call 911 and hold it together about what's going on. I mean, really, you see ordinary people become extraordinary under these kinds of circumstances.
And she was a very, very strong witness. She did not waver in her identification. So I think that is going to be very, very strong testimony at the end of the day for these juries.
So I want to go back to recapping the opening statement. In the opening statement, the prosecution really lays out what we're going to hear, and then we're going to have some more in-studio analysis based on that opening statement and what we really did hear. So let's go into an opening statement. That's Jordan Harris. He's a state witness. He claims to not be a gang member himself, but he is friends with members of the gang, and he is giving testimony about gang activity, such as Facebook Live, going live before a street fight. He's giving gang terminology. He is setting the stage of what goes on the streets for us as viewers and for the jurors who are going to be taking deliberations on this to understand the context of this shooting and what led up to it. With me on set is Mari Henderson, a prosecutor out of Los Angeles. Mari, what do you make of this gang terminology and Facebook Live? I mean, isn't that evidence against them right there? I mean, why would they go live on Facebook?
I mean, members of a gang need to put in work. which means they need to prove that they are doing something for the benefit of the gang, and that's how they move up in the ranks of the gang.
Status.
And so, you know, oftentimes there's bragging rights that come along with doing certain things. Oftentimes people tattoo themselves in gangs when they've done something to commemorate that they've done something. You know the teardrop symbol. We know what some of these things mean, and now with social media, what better way to prove that you've done something to other members of the gang than to literally film it live? And they're not thinking of, you know, the long-term effect of it being used in a trial against them.
Right, and so a lot of these gang members, like, in order to move up, you're right, they have to prove themselves. They have to shoot someone to gain status. But what about the code of silence? Does that not, does that not apply to someone who is friends of a gang member? I guess it doesn't, because he's talking. But is he putting his life at stake?
He is definitely putting his life at stake for testifying not only about gang culture, but about what happened here in specific. And oftentimes in these gang cases, one of the biggest hurdles is to actually get the witnesses to testify, because, you know, getting them in is a hurdle because of witness intimidation, and then getting them on the stand, getting them to actually tell the truth. A lot of times with gang members, they're going to recant on the stand, and then you have to impeach your own witness.
Yes, I know. I remember when I was a prosecutor getting witnesses to testify that were victims or who are intimidated. It's one of the hardest things to do. You lose witnesses, and sometimes the whole case, you know, you lose your case because everyone's afraid to testify, or you have to prove your case based on limited evidence because everybody else got scared. And then how do you achieve justice, right? So this witness, Jordan Harris, we have more testimony from him on the stand. He is a witness that was on the scene live when the shooting happened. So we have more to listen in on that. Let's take a look. That's Jordan Harris. He claims he's not in a gang, but he's friends with these gang members. Obviously, we're hearing testimony. It sets the stage. We're dealing with a lot of bad people. He was at the scene, and when the shots were fired, he said there he saw Reginald Williams, the cousin of the baby, Aiden McClendon, who was shot and killed in gang crossfire, pick up a gun and run with it. He said he was unclear on whether or not that gun was shot and fired. And then he said that after the shots stopped, that he went to the hospital with Reginald in the car, but that he doesn't remember if the gun was in the car with them. With me, Mari Henderson, prosecutor. Why is this important testimony, and what is it that they're trying to establish?
I think they're trying to establish the motive as to why this baby was shot, that the intended victim was Reginald, and the second that he saw these shots being fired, he immediately acted in the defense of himself and of his family. And so I think this lays the groundwork for the whole gang rivalry, and that was the reason for this shooting in the first place.
Right, so I want to talk more about that, but we have to go to a quick break. So stick with us and don't go away. We'll be back soon. Welcome back. We are following closely the Aiden McClendon case out of Jacksonville, Florida. This is the case where a baby was caught in gang crossfire. With me on set is Marion Henderson. Marion, what do you, Mari Henderson, sorry about that. What do you make of the fact, right before the break we were talking about how Reginald Williams took his gun and ran in self-defense, or, you know, in defense of himself or whatever. But then the shots were still fired at the car and the window and the tires as the car was trying to leave. It was asphalt to the metal. Why would they continue to shoot at the car if they saw the intended target running away from the car?
He may have been the intended target, but whoever was in that car was clearly associated with him. And oftentimes in gang rivalries, it's anyone who's associated with that gang member. There is a bounty not only on your head, but on the heads of your family members.
Okay, so I'm just curious. So this was charged as a second-degree murder case, right? Not first-degree. Why would transferred intent even apply if they don't care who they shoot, as long as it's someone else in the rival gang?
You know, I think you're bringing up a good point for the defense to raise in closing arguments. And also, you know, the fact that it wasn't charged as premeditated, that it wasn't planned, because of the transferred intent issue, they can't prove the premeditation. You know, I think they can raise that, the defense can raise that in you know, their closing arguments that the intended target was running, the intended target was fleeing.
Okay, but so if the intended target was premeditated, right? If it was intended and there was mens rea to shoot and kill Reginald Williams, the cousin, and then that intent, the premeditated intent, transferred and killed a baby, how is that not still first-degree murder and transferred intent?
It's interesting in the way that they charged the
Or
case
is it
here.
possible that the prosecution just didn't want to overcharge the case because they wanted a guilty verdict and anyway?
Exactly. Charging can be, you know, you want to charge what you can prove, and then there's also lesser included offenses. But here they did not go all the way for premeditation, maybe because they thought there was an issue in proving that there was a deliberation here, that they planned to shoot and kill. Or here was it, you know, the issue of, you know, in the heat of the moment, But
there was with the Facebook Live fueling beforehand. I mean, that getting groups together, gangs together, fueling on Facebook Live, it seems like that is premeditated. You know, I mean, if I were a prosecutor, I would want to charge this case up. It's such a high-profile case.
And I don't know what those conversations were, you know, before going into trial, but obviously here they feel that they can prove second-degree murder, and I think they've put on a pretty strong case so far with the witnesses they've had. And I think for a gang case, the fact that they were able to get so many different gang members to testify and almost serve as their experts in discussing with the jury what gang culture is, what gang rivalries are, and going to motive, I think that's really important, because having, you know, a gang expert, someone who is, you know, an investigator, someone with the police department who talks about, you know, patrolling this area and talking about gang culture is strong testimony, but having people who are actually members of the gang talk about it and talk about life day in, day out and what happens, I think is even stronger. Yeah, it's really an eye-opening case. It's we're hearing things we don't normally hear in a courtroom. That's why we've had a closed courtroom for 2 witnesses who are gang members. We're going to go to testimony now of Thomas Brown. He is the uncle of Aiden McClendon, the 22-month-old baby, and he has some critical testimony as well, and he was also in the car driving to the hospital after the shooting happened. Let's take a look. That's Thomas Brown, the uncle of Aiden McClendon, the 22-month-old baby who was caught and the victim killed in gang crossfire. He's mentioning Reginald Williams in his testimony, who was the intended target in this case. With me, Mari Henderson. You know, Mari, do you think this witness is a gang member himself? I do think he's a gang member himself, which is why he's being somewhat evasive in what he saw after the shooting and not wanting to name who or what car he saw after the shooting. Yeah, no, it's an interesting point you're bringing. And, you know, all these witnesses that we're hearing from, everybody, we're not sure who to believe and how to believe them. But we have to take a quick break. Stick with us. That's Officer Christopher Poole. He's one of the arresting officers in the Richardson Hayes case of the gang crossfire that murdered and shot an innocent baby. With me, Mari Henderson, prosecutor out of Los Angeles. Mari, what is the significance of the officer's testimony trying to lay the foundation of arresting them and this gun that was found? Is this like loosely connected, circumstantial evidence, or do you feel that this is something that's actually important to prove this case? I think it's very important testimony in that, you know, right after this shooting, the 2 people who are sitting in the defendant's chair and the gun they are alleging that was used to shoot and kill the victim were all found together at the same place. I think the issue is, you know, that it wasn't the same car that the grandmother and the mother identified as leaving the scene. Yeah, because this was a red car, and the one that everyone saw leaving the scene was a white sedan. Exactly, but I think that just, as long as someone else can testify to the likelihood of them switching cars or leaving, you know, oftentimes gang experts can talk about, you know, wanting to evade the police and hide from, you know, any detection. They oftentimes switch cars. So I think it's very important that they found both Henry Hayes and Kwame Richardson in the same car and a gun in the car so soon after the shooting and so close to where the shooting occurred. Right, and do you remember, like, what car the bullets were found in? Because I believe after they were arrested, that's when they found bullets that they were able to link to the potential gun. You know, wasn't present for that portion of the testimony, and I didn't listen to that portion of the testimony, but I think it's really important to link up whatever the shell casings were, which bullets with which gun, and then, you know, show that proximity to the defendant.
Right. So in this case, they're laying the groundwork right now. They're laying the foundation. This is the arresting officer. They were following the gang members. They got a tip that they were at Buffalo Wild Wings. They followed them. They decided to pull over the car. And then the defendants, the co-defendants, Richardson and Hayes, were found together. This was the beginning of the arrest of this high-profile gang case, which is out of Florida, a 2016 case where a baby was murdered in gang crossfire, an innocent victim, at the hands of gang rivalries trying to raise status for a different intended victim. This is a transferred intent case. Really a sad case. We've heard emotional testimony. This trial, we've been following it for days. It's our main trial, but we do need to throw to a quick break. Please stay with us. And as we are on break, we'll continue to watch testimony live in the courtroom while they're on break and keep a close watch on that for you. Stay with us.